Thank you so much, Gurjigit, for tackling on these difficult issues. And we will continue on the youth issues with our fellow from Turkmenistan, Dursunjemal Halimova, who recently got her Master in Public Administration from the Central European University in Budapest. Dursun specialized in human security and sustainable development, and before joining our program, she worked as a TOEFL Advisor at the American Council for International Education in Turkmenistan, and she got her Bachelors Degree from the American University in Bulgaria, and she will be discussing also youth issues and human capital in Turkmenistan.
Thank you very much, Marlene. Thanks for everybody for being here. I will follow up on the conversation of my colleague Gurjigit Armatov, who kind of provided an overview of youth political participation, while my presentation will look at youth economic participation. And I think youth issues become so important, especially today, since the world is experiencing economic slowdown, especially in resource-dependent countries. This is primarily caused by collapse in oil prices. But also at the same time, this is the first time ever we have a huge population of youth. Young people under 30 make half of the world's population. So youth are very important. Being a woman and growing up in rural area had its own disadvantages. I had to work extra hard to get higher education and get professional training. Once I realized it was possible, I decided and started working with young people to help them unleash their full potential. In order to succeed in this endeavor, I decided to work in two fronts. One, to influence youth, and two, to influence policies that target youth. Turkmenistan is a resource-dependent country, as over 40% of its GDP comes from resource extraction, primarily natural gas and oil. And since we know from the natural resource literature, resource can be both a blessing and a curse. In order to avoid the latter, the Turkmen government established a national program on socioeconomic development, which aims to raise the living standards to the level of developed countries by 2030. However, the government hasn't identified a clear path of how to get there. And if we analyze the traditional approach of Turkmenistan to economic development, which is resource extraction, we understand it is no longer a viable option, especially given the current situation in the market. But also, just to point out why it is no longer a viable option, Turkmenistan has limited gas roads. So, for example, in January 2015, it lost its traditional customer, Russia. And another reason includes price volatility, which makes Turkmen economy very vulnerable to price shocks. And recent decline in oil and gas prices was a clear illustration. For example, the local currency devalued by over 18% due to the decline of gas prices. And finally, natural resources are finite, and therefore the revenues are finite. It may happen that one day Turkmenistan's 80% of its fiscal revenues, which come from resource extraction, might be simply gone. But also we know from resource literature that natural resources, natural capital can crowd out human capital. And this is unfortunately the case in Turkmenistan. When we look at the available data that is produced by UN Human Development Index, Turkmenistan seems to do relatively well when comparing to other developing countries. However, when we dissect the indicator, we see a bit different picture. For example, public expenditure on education is only 3% of GDP, while only 8% of high school graduates continue to university education or vocational training. These numbers are the lowest, unfortunately, in Central Asia, so we are doing very poorly. But at the same time, Turkmenistan isn't fully utilizing its youthful labor force in productive ways, because youth unemployment in Turkmenistan is 20%, and it's actually twice as much as the regular unemployment rate. So given this policy challenge, how could Turkmenistan enable its youth to thrive and positively contribute to country's long-term and sustainable development? To offset the revenues coming from non-renewable sector, Turkmenistan should reinvest its resource revenues into youth capital. And if we look at the UN statistics, which gives us the projection about the population, how different age groups will evolve over time. If you look at the, so this is top right graph, the red line shows the median for youth population from 0 to 19. And according to this graph, young people in Turkmenistan the number of young people in Turkmenistan will grow from 2015 to 2025. And then after which it will start declining steadily. What this means? This means Turkmenistan has roughly 10 years to make sure it builds enough human capital by investing in education, training, exchange programs, and so on, because it will be the largest youth cohort the country will ever have. So it could really benefit from demographic dividends. Another graph on the bottom left shows the projection for the working age population, from 20 to 64. And on this graph, it says that working age population will grow from 2025, it will grow till 2045, sorry. It will grow till 2045, but then start declining. Again, this means that Turkmenistan has around 30 years to make sure its labor force is trained, competitive, and educated, because after this point, the dependency ratio will increase, and Turkmenistan might experience economic slowdown. This is primarily because we'll have fewer number of working age population trying to support a greater number of retired individuals. In order to find out if youth in Turkmenistan are successful, what makes them successful, or what impedes their ability to succeed, I conducted an online survey asking individuals between 17 to 30 years old about these questions. In total, there were over 100 respondents. One third of them were residing in Turkmenistan. Gender was more or less balanced. Majority of the respondents had higher education. And now I'll present some of the findings of the survey. These include just some of the highlights. The respondents in general have a negative view on youth in Turkmenistan. This points to two things. One is that Turkmenistan has poor human capital because its young labor force seem to lack education and training. But also, two, youth in Turkmenistan seem to be disinterested and disengaged in social issues and rather want to move abroad, work abroad. Excuse me. Another question asked about the factors that influenced young people's decision to stay abroad. And here, top responses included, you can see that the first red columns, limited opportunities for professional growth and limited jobs. But here, this graph also raises two important policy questions. One is that there are young people who have business ideas and who would like to set up their own enterprises in Turkmenistan, but cannot do so due to the difficulties of setting up a business. And two, there are some respondents who want to go back to Turkmenistan, but can't because their foreign degrees aren't recognized in the local labor market. So both of these are extremely detrimental to the local economic growth, since Turkmenistan is losing both qualified personnel, but also businesses which might have the ability to generate economic profit and generate jobs. Another finding includes a question about personal success. When asked to describe personal success, young people primarily said, you know, having opportunity to grow professionally, having a higher education, and having certain skills make them personally successful. There seems to be, the respondents seem to relate having a higher education to personal success, because when you compare the average success rate for those who have higher education and those who have only secondary education and vocational training, the difference is 2 points. And another point I would like to raise here is that although, you know, respondents in general described youth in Turkmenistan as disinterested in social issues and as self-centered, self-interested, young people still seem to want to contribute to their country's development. In fact, youth in Turkmenistan value contributing to Turkmenistan's development more than they value some monetary benefits, such as working abroad or having a well-paid job or even owning a house, which some of you might think, you know, that's the basic need, right? And finally, the major factors that contributed to youth to be successful include having a foreign degree and possessing certain soft skills. And these skills primarily include knowing a foreign language, being ambitious, and able to effectively communicate. Turkmenistan could benefit from its biggest untapped energy source if it is able to create the opportunities and environment where young people could learn, thrive, and contribute positively. Some of the policy recommendations are listed here. These are some of the recommendations. While education seemed to be very important for young people, and we all know the importance of education, it is important but not sufficient. There has to be other things like soft skills we need to develop among young people, because soft skills, especially such as life skills or emotional skills, these skills important for young people to be able to succeed in academics, in personal relationships, in social life, but also in a professional setting. And here, the primary, and my intention here with the policy recommendations is not to advise to change the education system, but rather to build on the existing infrastructure and to complement the existing teaching curriculum with more interactive and youth-friendly approaches. And a good place to start would be, you know, the institutions where young people spend most of their time. This includes the family and the schools. Family, I think it's important to educate parents of the importance of developing these soft skills at early age, because the literature on positive youth development points to the importance of starting early, and that's why I'm suggesting to target specifically young people from 0 to 19, for example. Another recommendation would be to supplement the teaching curriculum at pre-primary and secondary schools, especially to target developing soft skills. One very simple example could be, instead of assigning an individual homework, teacher could assign a group project and ask to work students in teams and then present their assignments. Another would be to upgrade school medical centers. This is important because adolescence and early adulthood is the time when young people are the most vulnerable and emotionally unstable, because this is when they experience physical, mental, but also emotional changes. So it's important to have experienced people like psychologists, for example, to provide need-based assistance. Another and the final recommendation is to establish and expand the existing youth centers. Here, the Turkmen government could cooperate with donor agencies like UNFPA, UNICEF to make these centers more attractive to young people by providing foreign language training, skills training, health education, but also volunteering experience so young people could engage in the local community. So to conclude, Turkmenistan should follow knowledge-driven economic development. Instead of relying on hard natural resources, it should focus on smart resources such as youth capital. Unlike natural resources, investing in youth can generate greater and more sustainable economic benefits. Thank you.